Good afternoon, everyone. The countdown to Thanksgiving has officially begun. We are, some would say, already in the holiday season, so it's time to talk about being safe while we do that. You may recognize our guest, Tim Bowers, Vice President of Clinical Effectiveness. We have had this conversation with Tim a few times over the past, what has it been, almost 20 months at this point? Today we are outside and we are 6 feet apart. We're both fully vaccinated, so we'll unmask for this conversation, which is lovely, and we'll get to, maybe having all holiday gatherings outside in a few minutes. But for now, let's kind of start. One of the last times we had this conversation was holiday season last year.
Right.
You and I were talking about vaccines aren't out yet. We need to be careful, wear your mask, stay in your bubble, FaceTime your family. Things thankfully are better this year, but it's still not 2019.
Right.
So let's start there.
So if you're doing your holidays like you did in 2019, probably not enough safety measures put in place. So that's a good message for this year. So this year we're really looking at another level of safety in the vaccine, right? So it's something that you don't have to think about. It's not a mask that you have to put on. It's not the windows that are open. So it really helps out in when you're attending someplace, you know that you've got that level of protection.
Absolutely. So if you have any questions for Tim during this conversation, I am in contact with our producer, Karen, who will be sending me the comments that you put in the chat. So feel free to submit those questions and we will get to them throughout our conversation. So if someone is watching and is fully vaccinated and they are thinking about going to the Thanksgiving parade in 2 weeks, or when Christmas Village reopens, or other outside things, what is the safest way that they can do that?
So we still have levels of safety. We talked about this last year where, there is the ultimate safety, which is in your house doing Zoom through the holidays or watching the parade on TV. With vaccination, you get to open up a little bit more again with that protection. So outdoors, fully vaccinated, 6 feet, there's not a lot of people in your space. Probably okay to keep your mask off. And if you have comorbid conditions, if you're worried that you could have a difficult course if you were to get COVID even after being vaccinated, always take more precautions. It's always better to err on the side of safety, but definitely bring that mask. Even if you are vaccinated, you could get into a situation where everybody realizes you have that prime spot to see everything for the parade. So, people start to get a little too close for comfort. You can put that on and just know that you have that extra level of safety. Being outside for these events definitely helps. But if you're going to be going in and out, again, definitely bring your mask. Make sure that you can keep safe.
And even if you're fully vaccinated, when you head to the Christiana Mall to do your holiday shopping, put that mask on. That's correct.
Anytime that you're indoors with individuals that you don't know their vaccination status, or you know that there are individuals that might be unvaccinated, definitely have your mask. The vaccine definitely reduces the likelihood that you're going to contract COVID. It reduces the likelihood that you would spread COVID, significantly reduces the symptoms you're going to have if in the event you contract COVID, but it's not 100% all the time for everything. So be sure that you at least have it with you, so that way you can put it on outdoors if there's a lot of people around you, or if you were to happen to go indoors. The mall has a lot of people, knowing that roughly 80% of our area, 70-80% has at least one dose. That's great. Only 60% are fully vaccinated. So you're looking at 2 out of 3 people probably vaccinated, which leaves 1 out of 3 not vaccinated in the Christiana Mall, which can get very crowded, especially this time of year. Always safer to grab your mask and bring it with you.
Absolutely. And if you are the holiday host, every year you host Christmas. Last year obviously was different, so this is the first time you've had to think about that COVID safety and hosting. What should you keep in mind?
I'm glad that I'm not the host. That's never been my role. I'm the sweet potato guy. That's
nice.
what I bring for my holidays. So for host, if you can ask that everybody be vaccinated, try and ensure that there's ways that, if they are unable to be vaccinated, right? So our little ones just got that approval, 5 through 11. They are not fully vaccinated yet. They timing wise can only have had 1 dose so far. And so, doing testing a few days out for those that are not going to be vaccinated. Overall, the same things that we talked about last year about being safe during COVID still apply. Outdoors is safer than indoors. Lightly attended is better than densely packed individuals on the inside. So however you want to manage your events, I would always err on the side of safety. So windows open if people have to be indoors, eat in shifts. So if you want to have an event with a number of people, try and have part of it outside, part of it inside. You're just trying to reduce the exposure of one unmasked person to another unmasked person. So if you think about a large gathering of unvaccinated individuals eating at the same table, that's probably one of the scenarios you want to try to avoid to prevent COVID spread.
Would you recommend keeping the kids table so that at least if they're not fully vaccinated, they're all not fully vaccinated together?
That is an interesting call. I hadn't thought about the kids table before coming out here. Probably good to keep the kids with their bubble, with their nuclear family, so that way they're individuals that they're used to be exposed to. And again, that has to do with kids not being fully vaccinated.
Right.
As we get closer to Christmas, I think we'll have some kids that are fully vaccinated, hopefully, and so then you'll have a level of protection that might warrant having the kids table back again.
So if you are attending a different holiday party, if your office has decided to allow holiday gatherings or, a Friendsgiving that you're trying to pick up again this year, what are your tips for that? Where you think everybody might be vaccinated, but you're not sure, and it might be inside, it might be outside. It's a little bit of that unknown.
Yeah, definitely have that mask with you, and kind of look at it. If it's going to be inside and you think everybody's vaccinated, I would limit the time that you don't have your mask on to when you're actively eating or actively drinking, and really that's just managing your exposure. And again, if you live with an individual who potentially could have a bad course with COVID, and you never know when COVID is going to have a severe case, is going to cause a severe case, but there are definitely some individuals with comorbid conditions that are actively looking out for to make sure that they don't get it. If you live or actively interact with somebody that is in that situation, definitely mask and do your best to prevent the spread of COVID, your exposure to COVID at these events.
So this time last year, we talked about traveling, and it was probably shouldn't get on the plane, probably not the safest option. A lot of people now were just traveling in general, did a lot of vacation over the summer, are now going to fly, to Colorado, California, wherever it may be, to see the grandparents for Thanksgiving or Christmas. How can they make sure that they're not taking COVID from that plane to their in-laws' house?
Yeah, that's again, that's a scenario where there's a lot of people in a little space, and that's kind of hard to manage your COVID risk. Definitely being vaccinated before traveling will help prevent the COVID from being able to infect you. Not 100%, so definitely wearing a mask in those indoor situations. Traveling in a car with your nuclear family, on the road to where you got to go. That's probably the safest bet if you're going to travel. Least safe would be whatever densely populated unmasked mass transit you could possibly do. Although I don't know of any mass transits that are not requiring masks at this point. So definitely getting that vaccine and limiting the exposure as much as you possibly can. I know it's hard not to be able to travel, being as though this is the first holiday season where we're able to do so a little bit more freely.
And what is your advice on testing? I know you mentioned this a little bit earlier. Should we test before? Should we test after? Should we only really test if we think we were exposed?
So I think definitely if there are rules for the events that you have to get tested ahead of time, definitely do that. We've learned through the last 20 months you cannot test your way out of COVID. That is just the nature of testing and the nature of COVID, unfortunately. So if you're unvaccinated and you know or believe you have been exposed, a few days, I think it's 3 to 5 days afterwards, get that test. They're available at CVS or other drugstores, anywhere you can get them. There's also some drive-through places. There's a lot of places to get COVID testing, which is great now as opposed to this time last year. So beforehand, though, it's no substitute for vaccine. It's no substitute for opening windows. It's no substitute for masks. But it could let you know what your COVID status is before going into event with a lot of other people. So probably not a terrible idea. If you're unvaccinated, I would suggest doing a COVID test if you know you're going to be unmasked with individuals within the same within the same room.
And would it be a good idea to kind of maybe lay low a few days before going to that event, not necessarily being potentially exposed at 7 places leading up to dinner on that 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, definitely. We have 2 weeks, which is great, which is the incubation period. So if you're able to manage your exposure in the next 2 weeks, you know that you'll be that you'll only have your normal exposure rate. So we are at work now. We have our normal work exposures. We have to be masked in the indoors. I know that I would mask indoors anyway. And so I have that level. What I'm not going to do is go to a place unmasked indoors between now and Thanksgiving, because we do have individuals with comorbid conditions that could potentially have a bad course with COVID for my holiday plans. So that's just what I'm going to do. It's probably not a bad idea to do that. Try and limit it as much as possible, knowing that life happens, school happens. There are places that we get exposures that are unavoidable. Mm-hmm. So if you could avoid the avoidable exposures, that's kind of good advice going into the holidays.
And how does the flu factor in? The flu has always been here. We weren't having these conversations a few years ago, but it certainly was always flu season during
mm-hmm.
the holidays. So how do we keep that in mind with COVID?
Actually, the one holiday season we didn't have flu was last year. In Delaware, anyway, the first case of flu, I think, was in February or March. It was just between the masking and the distancing and everything that we had put in place for COVID, we were able to avoid having the flu. That is not the case this year. We already have a few cases in all of the surrounding states, too. So I checked Delaware and New Jersey and Maryland. Even in, I did not check Virginia, but I wanted to get to that, unfortunately. But Pennsylvania, definitely, there is flu around us. And so spread similarly to COVID, wearing a mask and distancing will help you with that. Getting your flu shots, again, that kind of passive, even if you were to be exposed to it, much less likely to get sick, and again, much less likely to pass it. So flu is unfortunately here. We were very concerned last year about a twin-demic, both mm-hmm. COVID and flu occurring at the same time in the same population. Last year that did not come to fruition. A lot of it had to do with, I'll say, our messaging around staying home, and not just you and I, but around healthcare. We let people know you should not travel. This year's a little bit different, so definitely have to make sure that you're washing your hands in addition to all of the things we just talked about.
And if people are trying to make sure that they get all of their vaccines maybe before 2 weeks from now, getting your second dose of COVID, your booster, at the same time as the flu shot, totally fine.
Yep, get them in different arms is the only guidance that we talked about. Early on, there was the messaging around probably get them at 2 different times if you hadn't gotten your flu shot by the time the COVID vaccine had come out. Millions of doses, tens of hundreds of millions of doses have been given. It is safe and effective, and you can get them at the same time as your flu shot.
And what is your message to those who haven't been vaccinated at all yet?
Yeah, tough conversations with individuals who have not been vaccinated. I'll say that with 80% having at least 1 dose, the safety is there. This is now one of the most studied vaccines that have ever come out, and one of the most widely used vaccines in a short amount of time that have ever come out. And the safety is there, the efficacy is there, and some of the side effects you'll get with any vaccine, with soreness and whatnot, and any of the untoward effects that you could have from the vaccine, 100 times worse if you were to actually get flu. Actually get flu or actually get COVID. Some of those side effects are even worse when you get that disease, and so important to know. Generally everybody has a mild course, but some don't feel all that great. But it's always better than getting COVID. And so if you've not gotten it yet, if you are still on the fence, definitely talk to your primary care physician. If you've not signed up your 5 to 11-year-old, talk to your pediatrician if you need more information. Being a father, I absolutely understand where you're at with wanting to know as much as you possibly can about a vaccine before giving it to your child. But know that the information is out there, and they will be able to best help you mitigate COVID in your child.
And if you're not feeling great, stay home.
Period. End of story. That was true before COVID. That's definitely true now. And there are some telltale signs like a loss of sense of taste or loss of sense of smell. If you wake up that way, generally don't interact with people. That's one of the things that came out early. That was just one of the telltale signs of COVID. But it could also be as simple as a sniffle, a little bit of a cough, a little bit of a fever. Individuals used to go to work with those signs and symptoms. Important not to do that anymore because this does spread fast in indoor environments. So be sure if you're not feeling well, whether it's work or a holiday party, even if you're the event planner, important to get tested, know your COVID status if that were to happen.
And what is the most important thing you want our viewers to get out of this conversation today?
So from today, this holiday season is going to be different than it was last season, but it should not feel like 2019. We hopefully will be vaccinated. If you've not been vaccinated, please do so, or talk with your physician or your child's pediatrician about getting vaccinated. Be sure, if you're going to be inside with others that are not in your household, that you're wearing a mask if you don't know their vaccine status. And really, I really hope that you have a safe and healthy holiday season.
Tim, as per usual, thank you so much for all of that information.
Thanks for having
we
me.
hope it was helpful for you as you finalize your Thanksgiving plans and look forward to Christmas in about 6 weeks. And we wish you a great and safe and healthy holiday season. Thanks so much. Have a great night.